Are you going to be sworn in after this? What's the plan for today?
It's my hope. I haven't heard from the Speaker's office, but all the conversations I've had with other folks have been positive. I think that Speaker Johnson may have even said publicly that he's dealing with a 1-vote margin, which would be an indication that he's going to swear me in. Yeah. I'm just excited to be here and to get to work. You know, we have a district that has been without representation for just under a year.
It's amazing.
Frankly, we should have had somebody in Congress a very long time ago. I'm glad that we're at this point, and I'm excited to get to work.
Well, so what's this debate going to be like surrounding the Department of Homeland Security? This is the first major debate in Washington, a national debate that you're jumping into. And Texas is no stranger to this debate. You're obviously a border state. You're one that's seen National Guard troops. You're one that is used to actually seeing ICE enforcement. But seeing it in the middle of the country and seeing roving bands of ICE agents who are masked has had a very different look for a lot of Americans. Do you support the restrictions that Democrats are calling for to be put in place?
I will not be voting for funding for DHS.
Okay.
In Houston, we are a community of immigrants, of folks from so many countries who have come, who participate in our economy, who run small businesses, who hire folks, who do fantastic work, and we believe in recognizing their dignity and their humanity. But instead, what we've seen is the president and Noam radicalize an agency, so much so that they're terrorizing communities and executing people on the street. I believe very deeply that we should not allow ICE to do what it's been doing, and I look forward to one of my early votes being to do everything I can to block additional funding to DHS.
So you're a no on this continuing resolution. What do you think about the bill that's being crafted to bring some new restrictions? We're hearing about no masks, body cameras, additional training. Is there more that you want to see?
Absolutely. I am supportive fully of ensuring that ICE is held accountable and that when they're out in our communities, they're conducting themselves in a way that is representative of the federal government. These folks should not be out there like thugs. They shouldn't be harassing and terrorizing people. And if they are going to be in the streets doing any type of law enforcement work, they shouldn't have masks on their face. They should have recorded fully every single time they're doing something and not be in a situation where they're able to commit what we all know are crimes and protected by the president when they're doing so.
Well, let's get real about what should happen. You said at your victory party that it's time to tear ICE up from the roots. Is that abolishing the agency or reforming it?
I support fully abolishing the agency.
Abolishing it.
I think you have to rip it down to the studs. Okay. I believe that
when you rip something down to the studs, though, that usually means you're going to rebuild it. That's not so much abolish. That's replace. No?
No, I want to abolish it. Okay. I think you rip it down to the studs, and when it comes back, it shouldn't be ICE anymore. It should be a different type of law enforcement agency that is built in a way that ensures that communities are going to be protected. You can't take something that was created and has been radicalized to this level, that has harmed so many people, and try to have minor reforms on it in a way that you think is going to protect people. I think that they are far past the line, and after folks are executed in the street, it's time to tear it down.
I hear the principle that you're standing on. I've heard also a lot of Democrats say that it has the same ring as defund the police, which is something that a lot of progressives are still answering for because they felt like it was misunderstood. Do you feel like this could be misunderstood?
No, I think people in this country are smart enough to understand that when you have an agency that has gone this far, when people are being executed in the street, when they're conducting law enforcement operations with masks on because they don't want to be seen when they're doing wrong. When I go throughout my communities, people who are black, white, brown, from every single community, they want this to stop as soon as possible. And I think the president has shown that he's not someone that you can negotiate with and trust to act in good faith. So I don't think we're going to be misunderstood, and I think the voters will be with us.
There's a demand that many Democrats have as well, that new rules of the road are not enough. You're clearly one of them. But they also say you need a new head of the agency, the Department of Homeland Security, that a new cabinet official needs to be there. Kristi Noem must go. Whether that ends up being one of the demands on the table, I don't know, but we talked to Senator Elizabeth Warren about this late Friday. Here's what she said.
I've been calling for Kristi Noem to be pushed out of there.
Should that be part of a deal?
I would love to see that as part of a deal. But the core of what we're asking for here, it shouldn't take us 2 hours to write this and put it together. It's abide by the same sets of restrictions that every other public safety officer abides by.
Do Democrats need to dig in on replacing Kristi Noem?
Absolutely. I think she has shown that she is unable to lead this agency in a way that respects the dignity and the humanity of folks in this country. I think she has failed miserably, and she needs to be out. And I fully support, and I've said this on the campaign trail, doing whatever we can to get her out of office.
There are articles of impeachment. We talked to the author, Representative Robin Kelly, who's got a number of signatures. I think she was beyond 170 last time we looked. Would you sign on to those?
Yes. Look, I fully support investigating every single thing she's done and proceeding with impeachment based on what the investigation reveals. But what we've seen so far is very clear evidence that she is unfit for the job and that we need to move on.
Well, Representative-elect, this is not the only issue that brings you to Washington. And I don't want to pigeonhole us to this single issue, because you're about to begin a career as a representative in the United States Congress. Once this government reopens, assuming that it does at some point in the near term, what's important to you this year? There's a crypto market structure bill that we've talked about a lot, but a pretty light agenda. And the conventional wisdom is you get into the midterm campaign cycle and the store closes. What can this Congress get done this year?
What I'm going to be focused on out the gate is constituent services, because my community has been without that in a real robust way for almost a year. But as far as national policy goes, I'm passionate about health care. I grew up with a brother who suffered from childhood cancer, and the only reason we were able to afford his chemotherapy, his radiation, and ultimately the bone marrow transplant that saved his life was because my parents were service persons and they had military insurance. So I'm focused on making sure that healthcare is a right and that no person out there has to choose between putting food on the table and getting life-saving treatment that a family member needs.
We ended last year thinking that there might be a deal on ACA subsidies, which forced the last shutdown. There was a bill that many Republicans crossed the aisle to vote for a couple of weeks back. Nobody's even talking about that right now. What are you hearing from party leaders as you arrive in Washington?
Well, I haven't had many conversations yet. I just got off the airplane. But look, I believe very deeply that we need to restore the subsidies. I'm talking to so many people in my communities who are seeing their premiums jump substantially. And they're terrified because these are folks who have relied on having a low deductible for such a long time, and now they know that they're going to be in a position to where maybe they're not going to afford the health care that they need. So I look forward to that conversation coming back up, but I fully support universal health care in this country because I just believe that health care is a right, and no person should have to choose between those two things.
So what are you in for? You need an office? You need furniture? You need a staff? Does all that happen now?
A map, the whole nine. I didn't work in D.C. politics at all, so this is all new to me. But in my entire career, I've been placed in new situations, and I've been able to work it out. I took over an office called the Harris County Attorney's Office, third largest county in the country, 300-person office. I ran the whole office. I had people working there who had been practicing law longer than I had been alive. I was able to figure that out. I think I'll be able to figure out the halls of Congress as well.
I'm sure that's right. Just in our remaining moment, there was another race that a lot of people are talking about from last week, and it managed to flip a Senate seat to the Democratic Party in Texas that a lot of people didn't see coming. It wasn't on a lot of radars. Will we make a mistake if we turn this into a bellwether, a trend story, or is this about that district?
It's incredibly important what happened out in Tarrant County. Look, this is a county that historically is Republican. The margins were pretty slim, but this Senate district was overwhelmingly won by President Trump the last time he ran. I think what you're seeing is people recognize the incompetency that's coming out of this presidential administration. So I look forward to this 2026 statewide campaigns we're saying, and I'll be doing every single thing I can to make sure that more districts flip the way that one did.